Hello, everybody, and welcome to another inspiring conversation with me, Claire Westwood. I'm the Chief Creative Maverick, and I'm here to activate luminaries all around the world to live their purpose and fully express themselves. And today I have a wonderful guest with me, the very beautiful Emma, who, and I always talk about how I know people. So sometime early last year, April maybe, posts started coming up on Instagram for an event called Misfit Nation. Must have been an advert, and I'd never heard of Emma before or this whole group that she was running. And I was like, oh, that sounds exciting. I wonder where that is. And turns out it was in Bristol. I was like, oh, I wonder when it is. I wonder how much it is, like all these things. And I ended up going to Emma's event, seeing Emma on stage, booking a free call before her first talk had finished on the first section. And a couple of weeks later, I was Emma's coaching client, because what I felt with Emma was that she was so fully embodied and living her message that I knew that that's what I needed to help me clear out all the visions and all the ethereal stuff I had and really embody it. So I was working with Emma for 6 months last year, which was amazing. And so now the tables have turned. And now I get to probably learn things about Emma that I didn't know before, because the coaching conversations obviously are generally in the other direction. So good morning, Emma. Thank you for joining me.
Hi, I'm so happy to be here. Obviously watching you, meeting you all that time ago, and then watching you absolutely blossom over the course of this last year has been an absolute pleasure. And I'm so happy to be here on this with you now.
I
Yes.
know. Woohoo! It's out of the journal and out in the world. It's
I
amazing.
know.
So exciting. So we were talking about before the recording about Emma's story, and what we want to start talking about is something that a lot of people have, whether they're male, female, or non-binary individuals, is this good girl, good boy, good person role that we like to play, sometimes to keep the peace in our family, sometimes to get attention in our family, sometimes to not rock the boats in our family. And we get rewarded for it at school for getting the right answers. So do you want to start talking a bit about like your journey with the good girl, good boy role, or what you think that actually is and how it affects us as children?
Yeah, of course. So before I kind of dive into that, I'll just say kind of what I do now, and because it's very relevant to
Yeah.
that story. So I'm Emma Eirene, and I'm a trauma-informed sensual somatic coach. And basically, much like Claire was saying there, I train people to become embodied CEOs, to lead, sell, and scale from pleasure. So from pleasure and
Yeah.
joy. And that's because for my whole journey, pretty much up until I was about 38 years old, I was the good girl. I pleased. I spent my life being trained to obey and to please everyone else.
Yeah.
And that was it really. I call me obviously the good girl, but it's really about living life as the shoulds. And this
Yeah.
started way back, when I was a kid. This was in school. And to be honest, my previous life, I was a primary school teacher for 15 years.
Yeah.
And that was one of the main reasons that I left teaching and left education, was because I realized that I was walking into a system that I wholeheartedly disagreed with, because what we were training was the children to be obedient, to be quiet,
Yeah.
to sit still, not talk, to not be too loud, not be too much, to conform.
Yeah.
And that's how I was, and I hated that. I realized that I followed the rule book of life my whole life. I did everything we got taught, all in the right order. I went to school, got an education, got
Yeah.
a degree, went postgrad, went into
Yeah.
a safe job, into teaching, met my person, got married, bought a house, had the children, and I had a complete and utter mental breakdown. And
Yeah.
that was because I was so out of alignment with myself for so long.
Yeah.
And it just meant that my world had to implode for me to actually come back to myself. And it was in that moment, it was in the choosing of myself, that everything I now do came from.
Yeah. So when you had that, so it's interesting, we're saying like we're programmed to play this role quite often as children, unless we start to play the rebel and the maverick early on.
Yeah.
Um, And then, you know, as a teacher, you found yourself perpetuating the same thing. Like, did you have the insight at that point to go, oh my God, I've played this role and now I can see myself starting um to you know, yeah, to perpetuate a system or a process that you didn't feel was working for you as an adult, sort of thing?
Yeah, well, to be honest, I was I was a little bit of the rebel teacher
Yeah.
at school, and you know, in some ways that served me well. I ended up being lead practitioner for South Gloss and was then teaching teachers, which was great because I could finally pass on the message about learning with purpose and
Yeah.
play and all of that. But it also meant that there was a lot of resistance to that. And I tried for years. I was such a massive advocate for play, for creativity, and it felt like I was hitting my head against a brick wall. So
Yeah.
I could see, you know, obviously we were measured as teachers by certain standards. So when we had our assessments and our lesson observations, you had to meet certain criterias.
Mm.
But me within the classroom, generally, the children were very happy and we used play and we used purpose. And they're learning when we did that. And when
Yeah.
I had that, you know, freedom and autonomy within my own space with them, they're learning and that was the key thing, them, child-centered, they flourished. They
Yeah.
absolutely flourished.
Yeah.
And I just realized that I was in a losing battle to the system, and
Yeah.
it broke my heart and I just couldn't do
Yeah.
it anymore.
Yeah, that's so interesting because my proper career was nursing, and I got into coaching because I felt myself, you know, getting burnt out and that kind of thing. And then I decided I'd put coaching into the system. I was like, right, I'm going to do work-life balance for nurses and I'm going to teach them and da, 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 da. And it was just like, yeah, I'm going to change the system. And then in the end, I was like, yeah, the system, yeah, I can't. You know, the system doesn't want to be changed in many ways. And then it's like, okay, what do I do with this now? So yeah, so you reached a crux in your life where you realized you'd kind of followed what I call the spreadsheet of life. You know, you get the education, the degree, the job, the partner, the kids, the house, the car, all the stuff, and then we go, what the heck am I doing with myself? So was that kind of a gradual realization, or was it a sudden thing that hit you, or like how did that realization manifest itself for you?
So it was definitely not gradual. I think there had been indications of it for a long time, but
Yeah.
you busy yourself. Everybody's so busy. You don't have
Yeah.
time to stop and notice and pause,
Yeah.
right? So
And it's
so what happened?
inconvenient to go, my life doesn't fit me. I'll just stay on this track because it was almost like too difficult sometimes to think about as well, I think.
I just think I was so busy with living the life that I should be living that it wasn't even something that crossed my mind at that
Right.
point. I started my business alongside teaching,
Yeah.
you know, so that was back in 2013, and I was just so busy all the time that I
Yeah.
just didn't even notice. And then what happened? It was actually COVID, but it was before we knew it was COVID. So
Right.
end of 2019,
Yeah.
start of 2020, I was really ill. Now, I then thought I was getting better, but I didn't. And I
Yeah.
got progressively worse and worse and worse. And I was actually very, very lucky because I went to the doctor and they signed me off immediately saying, you need to stop everything. And
Yeah.
then they said, we'll bring you in for a physical review the next week. And then actually they said, no, we're not worried about the physical side. It's like, we want to talk about your mental health.
Yeah.
Because at that point where my body told me before my mind could catch up. And
Yeah.
this is why I work with somatics now, because your body knows way before,
Yeah.
way before. And it was the same with this all came about all at the same time. I realized that, you know, my body would not repair until I started to repair my mind and basically realign with who I was. And then where I started to reconnect to myself again, and I'll talk about that in a minute of how I did that, because that's actually quite important, because a
Yeah.
lot of people are disengaged with their creativity, which I know is what you're all about as well. Um, I then started seeing other signs, and my body was rejecting my husband at the time, and my mind was finally catching up to it, going, oh,
Yeah.
there is a massive misalignment here. And it got to the point where it was a very toxic relationship.
Yeah.
And I had just been accepting it, because it was gradually drip fed over so many years that you think it's normal. And it was terrifying for me when I finally decided and chose myself, how not normal it was. It was through talking to people, talking about things casually, and they're looking at me with this state of shock saying, what?
Yeah,
And
because it becomes normal for us, but then we realize
exactly.
it's not actually normal. We're just kind of conditioned into it.
Exactly,
Yeah,
exactly that. And
totally.
it was actually the moment that I chose myself. I had, at the time, I had no idea what this was, by the way, but it's
Yeah.
now what I know was a Kundalini awakening, and it
Mm.
flooded my body, and I have never experienced anything like it. And luckily, I've got very spiritual friends
Yeah.
who were able to say to me, look, I think this is what's happening to you. So
Yeah.
I had 2 solid weeks of being in this, my body just was in this intense state of arousal, and I had
Mm.
no idea what to do with this energy, because it's not an energy I had ever felt in that way before. But funnily, it started to reconnect me to my younger, like 16 to 18-year-old self, when
Mm.
I was a lot freer.
Mm.
And I started getting all these memories, and it was that through that reconnection to my body that I realized the absolute power of pleasure. And
Yeah.
hence why now I'm such a massive advocate of that, because
Yeah.
I
And
realized,
that's such a common story. So, you know, in lots of these conversations, this is for the audience, in lots of these conversations, it's very similar themes often, is our body is telling us things are going wrong before our mind really realizes it. So we've had, burnout, breakdowns, depression, addiction, autoimmune illnesses, like, you know, when we're living those lives that don't fit us and don't work in an energetic, spiritual alignment, sort of authentic way, this will happen. So if it's happened to anyone listening or watching this, it seems to be a part of the journey. It's like eventually we get to a stage where our body and brain goes, nah, like I'm checking out of this, I can't do it anymore, or something happens to really get our attention.
exactly. And you've got to be brave enough to listen to it. And I think that's the
Yeah.
hardest bit. You know, if you think about the word disease, it is dis-ease. It's the manifestation of things being wrong within your body. You
Yeah.
know, and these are how these things happen. And I felt it. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't speak. And it was actually the moment I heard my daughter from across the room. I was in a different state. I was somewhere else. And all I
Yeah.
heard was, Daddy, why can't Mummy stop crying? And that was the thing. That was the spark that then got me
Yeah.
out of it, or started to get me out of it. And then it was actually my art. So during my time teaching, you know, I've always been an artist. Took me a long time to call myself that, but during teaching, it all came out through that. You know, I'd do it through school, I'd do it for the children and the lessons, and I would teach it, teach it, teach it.
Yeah.
But it was actually in that moment that that was the only thing I could do. The
Yeah.
only thing I could do was come back to my artwork. And I realized, I opened up my sketchbook, and it had been 10 years. I
Wow.
dated the
Yeah.
last thing I did in it, and it had been 10 years before I'd actually done anything creative for myself.
Yeah.
And it was through that, it was through the creation process. I actually started doing a series on eyes, and there was the reflections in the eyes. So that started as sketches, went on to watercolors. And it was through that I started to speak again, and I started to talk, and I started to come back to myself.
Mm.
You know, you can see my office right now. It's got this led to me opening an art studio, then an art gallery, and that was my transition from where I was to where I am now. And now my house is full of what was my art gallery.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I love being surrounded by it because it reminds me who I am. Every piece was a connection, and it led to this. It led to something that this was never on my plan.
Yeah.
It wasn't
Totally.
the plan. It took me way off of the plan, but to where I was actually meant to be.
Yeah, that's so interesting, because like I do a lot of intuitive art and stuff now, but the thing that the creative expression that really broke me out was singing for me. So I was the same. I'd, worked really hard, got a degree, got my junior sister's post, and I was about 30, and I was like, oh, is this it for another 30 years? And my best friend, who I used to sing with a lot, we were student nurses together, was like, hey, you never sing anymore. You've got a beautiful voice, you should be singing. And I started having singing lessons. And my life externally was still the same. I had the same job, the same friends, the same stuff going on. But I remembered, like you were saying, I've got tingles down my legs now. I remembered who I used to be. I was like, oh my God, I'm a singer. Like, because I sing, like you're an artist because you make art. So, anyone listening to or watching audiences, it's like creativity. When we were really involved in it when we were younger, maybe, and then we stopped doing it, it's almost like I had another conversation earlier, and my friend Mark loves live music, and he said, his first time he went to see live music after lockdown was like a blood transfusion. And I'm like, it really is. It kind of gives us life, so that the kind of the art can connect you with your soul, and you can express that through. But doing things like singing, movement, or improv that I do now, where we're using our bodies, it reconnects us to our physicality, but also it just reminds us who we were before we were told who we should be, which I know is a bit of a cliche, but it's absolutely true. And I was like, oh, singing. So for me, it was like singing. And then I was like, I wanted to be more confident on stage when I was in the band. So I did some drama classes. That's where I discovered improv. And I was like, oh my God, working as a nurse is getting in the way of me being a performer. So I'm going to cut down my job and actually embrace this part of my life. Again, wasn't on my plan. But I'm going to go and study performing arts because why not? Do you know what I mean? So it's kind of following those clues, even though it's not on our schedule and it wouldn't have been predictable. That's where the magic happens.
Exactly. I mean, I think that the whole blood transfusion to your life, that's so relevant, because actually most of the people that come to work with me, the first thing they say to me is, I just want to feel alive again. And I know that feeling so deeply. It's like you've been sleepwalking through life and doing all the things you think you should. And interestingly though, is that as soon as you actually choose yourself, then everything starts to realign. Because when all of this happened, I was still working. We were going through COVID, teachers still had to go in, so I had I went back in out of duty, we were down staff. But then
you were key workers, man.
Oh, I know, exactly. But so I did go back in, and but obviously it was a phased return. And then what the school, as much as, like I said about the system, the school was still very supportive, and the people that I worked with were lovely, and they then saw this transition that I was going through, and what they decided to do was take me out of the classroom, as in not having my own classroom, but made me artist in residence. And so it meant that I was working with all the children across the school. So there I was, I had my studio, and then gallery came about. That was just from a holiday, and I always go to Padstow, and I love looking at the artists down there. And I just remember saying, I want this. This is what I want from life right now. And I went back, and within that same month, the space came up downstairs from my art studio for the gallery. And so I took it, I followed the flow, and I took the opportunity. So there I was, completely immersed in myself again. In who I was. I had the studio, I was teaching on my own terms. People were choosing to come to me to learn different art, different techniques, and I was freeing them through that, which was amazing. I had my gallery where I was actually suddenly selling artwork and doing big, like thousands of pounds worth of commissions. And then in school, I was artist in residence. And that just shows the power of when you say yes to yourself and that calling, whatever it is, like you were saying about your singing, your life starts rearranging itself. I can't even explain the science behind it. It is magic. But it just, things start falling in place, and opportunities appear that you have not planned for, you would not have expected. They just appear because you're magnetizing them through your own energy. And that's so powerful.
Yeah, totally. And one of the things that can stop us, when we're in that stage of going, oh, this isn't right, but I don't know what's ahead, is we can't see all those steps, and we never will see all those steps. So there's a lot about like following the next thing, following what feels good, following what lights us up and what feels alive. And this is themes we've talked about in a lot of these conversations. and they won't make logical sense because our logic is programmed to look for things in a particular way and plan things in a particular way, and it serves us at times. But when we're really listening to, and a lot of those messages come through our body or come from, you know, downloads or something that going, I've just had a word drop in, or somebody's just appeared in my life, and that's where the magic and the beauty and the real, you know, the trail, the path, you know, the path of the luminary, the path of the, you know, like it unfolds as we walk it. We can't plan it all in advance, and neither should we try to, but we can often get caught up in that, trying to know what's going to happen in the future.
100%, actually. And I remember when you and I first started to work together, you know,
Yeah.
that was very much, and this is the energy that I started in, was that real like drive, masculine energy of doing. I've got to do it this way, and I've got to do it this way, because that's what we were taught.
And I've got to do it this week.
Yes, I've got to do it now. It's got to be done by yesterday. And I've
you're
got to
like,
do 10 things.
whoa, slow down a minute.
Exactly. And actually, if you think about, and this is why I absolutely love working with the energy of pleasure, because what pleasure is actually all about is your ability to receive. So that means pausing.
Yeah.
That means trusting as well, that you don't need to know the whole picture. And this is coming from a recovering perfectionist. You know, so I always had to have that, and I always have to be planned, and I have to have a backup plan for the plan, you know. And it was actually through the art that I really, and this is interestingly, I taught the children this, but I was yet to embody it myself. That the mistakes are part of the work and are often the things that make things beautiful. If you think about us, and even just someone's appearance, it is often the unusual and unique things that makes people beautiful. Because it makes them different, it makes them stand out. And so embracing that within yourself, embracing that within everything you do, and slowing down, so that things, like you were saying, you're not planning for every eventuality, because you don't need to. That's actually the beauty in it. All you need to know is your next step. And allow that unfolding. And that's actually what being pleasure-led is all about. Just relaxing into that. Because when people, a lot of this is to do with the feminine energy, which I rejected for most of my life because I was very driven. But the feminine energy isn't the, if you think of a woman dancing, it's not actually the dancing bit, it's the moment she rests and breathes in between each move. That's the feminine. And I see our journey and our life much in the same way. It's that receiving of the breath, receiving of the pause, receiving of the guidance, receiving of the next step, and listening to your own intuition, your own guidance of the thing that actually sparks that within you.
Yeah, for sure. And that, you know, that does take some reprogramming of the nervous system. And, you know, I know that even now on my journey, there's part of me that goes, oh, I should be doing more, and I should be this, and it should be. And I think training as a coach was a great thing, but it also has, you know, when I trained, it was very much in the masculine, you know, it was 20 years ago, and it's like you set a goal and you work towards it, and you have to know the steps and the micro steps on the. And I can still get caught up in that a little bit, because my brain gets really happy, you know, with going, oh, great, I'm creating certainty, or I'm creating a plan, and and I'm like, oh, hang on a minute, I can feel a bit of that, you know, almost like addictive energy. I'm addicted to the knowing, to the certainty, and it's like, but I haven't done any of it yet. But it's just, you know, it keeps part of me happy. And there's another bit of me that goes, it's fine, you know, to sit and be and walk and relax and, you know, let things come to me. But we have to reprogram ourselves. And I think because, you know, life like yours, you know, very busy, very chaotic, we you know, we're thriving on adrenaline, but we're not really thriving in the right way. And then to actually allow our systems to be calm. And I remember reading a book a couple of years ago about purposeful living, Martha Beck, I think it was, and she was talking about what everybody wants is peace and calm. And I was like, I want excitement, exhilaration. And now I'm going, oh, I get it. Like the deepest part of me wants peace and calm, because that's where the power and the self-connection live. And I was like, right, I get it now. Whereas when I read it, I was like, nah, it sounds really boring.
I really, and this is the thing, is actually when you have that, because I think peace is a people misinterpret peace quite often, and they see it as someone there silent and still meditating, whereas actually, you know, you and I know very different. Peace is just that sense of trust.
Yeah.
It's that sense of trust in which actually that means that you don't have to always be productive. You don't have to always be doing. It means that actually a balanced life where you have those moments of pause, where you do get to just breathe and enjoy the sunset and walk and do the things that light you up, balanced with that pull, that drive, that, oh, I really want to do that because I feel excited by it. And that's the difference. A lot of people do out of duty rather than do because that's the thing they actually want to do.
Yeah. So I've just had a little download come to me where it's just going, peace. Peace is like where the portal opens. It's where we're open to receiving these messages. And the whole thing about like being guided from an inner, now is the time. So, you know, imagine a tide or waves or breath going in and out. We have to have the out and the in. So the productivity comes from, you know, the deep messages. And that's exactly where this YouTube channel started from. You know, I was doing my stretches Monday the 5th of January, and my body was just like, reach out to people today, Claire, start it now. And I'd already set up the page before Christmas going, I'll know when the time is right. And just feeling like I should be doing it already though, voice in my head. And then that day it was like I sent lots of messages, got lots of feedback, and here we go. You know, the whole thing has been birthed, and it takes energy and effort, but it's not been difficult because I was like, I really want to do it now. Like I can't not do it now, rather than I should be doing it now because I've said I'm going to do it, or what will people think, or even what will I think of myself because I'm procrastinating, or am I waiting until it feels absolutely aligned to do this?
So actually that's exactly the same as what happened to me. So obviously, you know, I released my book last November. My book I actually started 4 years ago. 4 years ago, I had the title for it, what it was going to be about, the layout. I'd actually written the introduction, and then I stopped. I couldn't write it. It was all there, or as I thought at the time, it was all there, and I was so frustrated with myself for quite a while. And then I just decided just to let it go and think, right, okay, well, it's there, and obviously there's something. So I just trusted that. 4 years later, it literally hit me end of last year. So I released it on the 11th of the 11th last year.
Of course you did.
Of course. But it was actually September that I wrote the whole thing. The whole thing. All of that.
Yeah.
And it all downloaded exactly like you was just saying. It just came.
Yeah.
So naturally. The structure was kind of the same, like the skeleton was the same, but the title changed to Unfuckwithable. It wasn't just about the pleasure code anymore. It was way more than that. Because obviously I talk about all the different kind of pleasures, which at the time 4 years ago, I wasn't there yet.
Yeah.
So it hadn't fully formed.
Yeah.
And then actually by releasing that, letting it go, then it literally within a month, I had written the whole thing and it was out and published in the world by November.
Yeah.
That's what happens when you follow this. And I know you are an absolute expert at doing that now. You know, watching you do that over the time that we work together, go from that kind of energy of got to be doing this and got to put it there to completely almost just melting into that trust was the most beautiful thing I've ever witnessed.
Yeah, totally.
Because it led to so much. And it's so funny that as you did that, the limitations that you felt at the beginning around what you wanted to kind of put out there and what you wanted to offer to where you were at the end of last year going, this is it.
Yeah.
this is the offer. This is what I'm putting out there. This is what people will do. It just landed.
Yeah, and there was still, you know, even when we break out of, you know, our corporate or original careers and go into the business and entrepreneurship and purposeful thing, there's still as many shoulds in this world as there was in the other world. So we have to be very, and I read this or heard this thing a few months ago where I went, oh, of course, you know, how things just land and you go, oh yeah, you know, there's a matrix in business, same as there is in corporate or, you know, teaching or nursing or whatever. And it's like we can fall into the same traps in our purposeful businesses as we did in our corporate, because if that programming is still there, and it's still something I'm navigating through for sure. But I think the other thing that, you know, that came from our work together is like, I've got all these, you know, we've all got loads of ideas. If we're creative, we love having ideas. And it's just like, but which are the ones that I really want to bring to fruition? Because it's not all of them. I love thinking about them and using my imagination and visioning some of them, but it's like, I don't have the time and energy for doing all of them. Neither should I be doing all of them. So it's about really kind of editing and honing down and going, you know, what's my core purpose and message right now for myself and the world, and then how do I most want to bring that out? And I think, you know, it's sort of getting back to the kind of almost like the seed that's inside, and then coming from there, because we quite often start from out here, especially now we've got so many influences and so many things we could be doing, you know, bright shiny objects times a million at the moment. Whereas when we can really tune in and know who we are, and the way, you know, there's all sorts of ways we can serve other people if that's the core of our purposeful business. But then it's like, but which ones really would work for me, would work for them, would feel like just pleasure and flow? And you know, these conversations are such a delight for me to have, and it doesn't feel like they're, you know, they're not difficult, but I do have to set them up. So there's always work involved in some way, but then it's like, oh yeah, I like to talk to interesting people, so why don't I just do it and share them in public, you know, instead of making it something really tricky and difficult. So yeah, sort of. And I think that's the core of kind of coaching, and coaches should be about guiding you back to the, you know, the truest version of yourself right now, knowing that that will evolve, and coming from that place.
Do you know what? It's so interesting as well. I love coaching. That is exactly the reason why I love coaching, because you're not teaching, you're guiding. You're pulling out the spark, and you're pulling the threads out of all the different things. And I really love that. And I find it so funny because I actually trained as a coach many, many years ago within teaching, because I was then coaching the new students that were coming in.
Right.
And I remember finishing my training and going, oh, I hate coaching. I wish I could just tell them what to do.
Yeah.
This was my 20-something self.
Yeah.
And I remember just rejecting it back then, because back then I had such a different mindset. Whereas now I love coaching for that exact reason, because it is the guidance of actually the people you work with coming home to themselves.
Yeah.
And
Totally.
understanding their joy, their pleasure, their sparks. And actually, this has come from my experience. And obviously, you know, I run the Business Misfit network now. And that actually came from me being a bit of a networking hussy for about 18 months, trying to find a group. But what I realized was that power of connection, what work looked like for me during that time, was a lot of really beautiful coffee dates and conversations. That led to me speaking on 39 stages in 1 year. That was my work. That's what work got to feel like. And that was so eye-opening for me. And then that's what led me on to the next thing and the next thing. And this is what I mean. Everything that you experience, your experience gives you little nuggets. And it's whether you are attuned to yourself to be able to listen to that. Does this spark me? Does this feel alive for me? Does this bring me joy? And that also, you know, what comes with that, and I think this is actually the most difficult bit, is actually the releasing of things.
Yeah.
It is so hard for us, because we were taught, all of us were taught, that longevity is success. This is why I stayed in my career for so long. This is why I stayed in my marriage for so long, was because longevity was the definition of success. If you can stick with something for a really long time, then you're successful. What I've learned now is actually you are far more successful when you are able to release and let go. And currently, as you well know, I'm expecting at the moment, I've had to go through over these last 4 months this process of releasing even more. Releasing and simplifying. And this is often the same with whatever, if you actually think about some of the best speakers maybe you've seen, they often are delivering a very simple message. And it's that simplifying of things that it makes it actually very powerful. And then when you apply that to your life, and like you were saying, you're following the joy, does this light me up? And allowing yourself to say, No, it
Yeah.
doesn't.
Yeah. And I think that, so I've worked with a mentor a couple of years ago, a money mentor, and it was interesting. I got quite involved in human design then, which
Yeah.
isn't something that I knew about it before, and I knew that I was a manifesting generator. And for anybody in the audience who hasn't heard of it, look it up online if you want to know more. But what I learned about myself was there's different ways that my body and brain have a yes response. And I was very much being led by my brain, the imagination, the excitement that, oh, I've had this idea, this feels really, it's really great, it'd be really good to do it. And what I've learned sort of really in the last couple of years is to go, oh, okay, so my brain's really excited about this, but what about my body? Is it a body yes? Does it come from the deepest part of me? And that takes time sometimes. Sometimes it's instant, like with the YouTube thing, do it now. That was very much a physical thing. And other times it's like, oh, okay, this feels really exciting for this part of me, but I have to give time for the deeper part of me to almost like concur. Otherwise, it's just another idea that will kind of take my energy out. And I know what you said about, when we started working together, there was so much energy, so many ideas, so many things, and all of it was kind of up here. And then over the process, it's like, oh, the unraveling the threads, and it was a big ball of multicolored wool. It was like, look how fun this is. And it's like, yeah, but let's pick out the pieces. And like you just said, when you're focusing on fewer things, life is much simpler, but also you can really give a lot of power to each individual thing because you're not scattered in the way that I was. And that all come from my beautiful imagination. I love it. But then it's like, but what's my body telling me?
Exactly. And I mean, this is so important because the most important thing here, because I'm also a manifestor generator, and I think this is obviously where there was so much synchronicity between us.
All the time.
And there's such a power for manifestor generators and generators actually to be able to pivot and allowing themselves to pivot and allowing themselves to adapt and change. But the most important thing, particularly, I'm sacral, so I really have to come from the pleasure and I have to be excited. And I think the important part was here that you learned yourself. You learned who you were and what worked for you. And I think that's really, really important because I think some of the key things you've said there is that, this relates to myself as well. I am multi-passionate.
Mm-hmm.
But the world we live in, we are told that we should niche.
Oh,
and
you can only do one thing.
Yeah,
you can't possibly be good at more than one thing. It's like, I think you can.
Exactly. Now there's a little bit of a hack here for that though, and it took me a long time to learn because I thought that meant do the one thing, be known for that, and that's it. And I tried to do that for so long, and it meant I was going against myself, and it never worked. Whereas when I learned that actually my niche is actually my message, my values, my core, what I stand for, my ethos, my why. That's my niche. But that means I can be a photographer, I can be an artist, I can be an author, I can be a speaker, I can be a coach, I can be a mentor, I can be a teacher, I can be all of those things and more. And deliver my message and my ethos and my values through that. And I think that's so important because so many people don't know that they're allowed to do that because there's such a strong message out there, particularly from the traditional, shall we say, kind of business training and things like that. It is all about do this and do this one thing and get known for that. Actually, no, get known for being you and what you stand for.
And
I deliver that, it's fine.
I feel really grateful as well because I had a lot of people that came into my life early on as kind of mentors, authors, authors, because we didn't have all the online stuff when I started, so it was books I was reading, who were like, yeah, you can be multi-passionate. A woman called Barbara Scher who wrote all about scanners, and that just changed my life totally. She's like, it's great to do lots of things, but we have to have systems, otherwise we get overwhelmed by our own ideas. I was like, okay, great. So she was somebody, she was coaching up until her 80s. She died a few years ago, but she's got these amazing books out. Nick Williams, who I'm going to be talking to on this, who was one of my very early mentors, wrote a book called The Work You Were Born to Do. And that talks about a portfolio career. And I'd never heard of it because I'd been a nurse. It's like you can do 2 or 3 jobs at the same time, And it's sort of like, oh, okay, I'm not wrong in wanting more than one thing. I'm not, and I'm probably like you in teaching, like I'm really grateful I went into nursing because nursing is full of variety. Do you know what I mean? I work with children on the children's ward. it's different every single day. So I get to express lots of part of myself and use lots of different skills. So I think, you know, the joy is in realizing that we can do all this stuff, but we have to have some ways of managing energy and ideas and projects so that we don't burn ourselves out with our own ideas, which is something that I have struggled with in the past. It's like, oh, I can do all of this, and then I do it, and then I'm like, I'm exhausted. It takes
Yeah,
so much
exactly.
energy.
And that was what was so beautiful about working with you last year, is exactly what you said. In fact, I remember after our first session, perhaps even our first call even, was I visualized this, like you said, that ball of lots of different colors, because all the ideas and everything you wanted to do was so vibrant.
Yeah.
And they were all very good. And that's when
Yeah.
it gets really difficult, you know, and it was through that process of really beginning to embody who you wanted to be,
Yeah.
rather than what you thought you should be,
Yeah.
trying to do all of these things, that you were able to pick out those threads.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm saying about you. That was the learning yourself is the most important work you will ever do.
Yeah.
Learning who
Totally.
you are, the way you work, what lights you up, what brings you joy, is the most important work you will ever do, because it's through that process that you're able to pick out those threads and go, this I'm getting really excited about.
Yeah, and I think the other important thing is like noticing the almost like the impulsiveness, the urgency has got to be now, because that's not me tuning into my deepest self and allowing things to come through. And last Friday, we had my great aunt's funeral, and my great aunt was 105. Right,
Wow.
all three girls in that sibling group lived to 100 plus, so I'm like, I could have another 40 good years ahead of me, and then 10 years resting at the end. So I'm like, okay, maybe that, I mean, we don't know how long we've got, but it's almost like this feeling of urgency, as in I've got to do it now, sometimes means we don't give ourselves time to tune in, or we don't do it in a way that really feels kind of powerfully aligned, if you will, because we're like, the urgency comes very much from up here, rather than let me feel really into it and then do it in a way that's got that real inner power in it.
Yeah, do you know what? I was, as you were speaking, I was actually thinking about our last session together. And in fact, our last two sessions, I believe, because it was actually, you were in that energy. And I
When we were
remember
consciously uncoupling, but I was like, I feel like I'm done anyway. I'm
that
ready.
energy. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. That energy, what the energy that was so present was the fact that I don't feel in a rush anymore. I'm building that legacy. I feel grounded in it.
Yeah.
That's, you know, and it may not have, it wasn't those exact words, but it was the energy that was in the room when we were there. It was very much of, there is no urgency, there is
Yeah.
no rush here. There
Yeah.
is, this is going to unfold as it's going to unfold. I have a date. I feel grounded in who I am. I feel
Yeah.
grounded in what I'm putting out there. It was that energy of 2 feet on the ground,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
still with that beautiful vibrant energy of what you were putting out there. It was such a different energy, and it was so beautiful to witness.
Yeah,
And
because then that energy, you know, that the power is really focused into what I want to be doing. And then yeah, it's really interesting. And I think some of that, you know, was the permission. Obviously, this is one of the things that coaches do for their clients, is give them permission to be themselves, but also to do it their way. And I remember when I was, you know, at the beginning, go, oh, I'm going to do it like this, and you're like, oh yeah, but what does it look like for Claire? What does it look like for you to do this? And, you know, undoing the programming of, I've got to do it now, I've got to do it this way, or I've read this, or I'm feeling like, oh, it's got to happen. It's like, okay, permission to slow down. So everybody watching or listening, permission to slow down
yeah,
and really, really tune in, because that is where your deepest guidance is going to come from. And then you realize a whole load of this stuff around here is glorious ideas, but is not necessarily the path forward, or not what you really want to be doing. So oh my god, anyway, so we are getting towards the end here, Emma. This has been amazing. I knew it would be. So what is it you'd like to share that you haven't shared so far, about the good girl, good boy, or leading from pleasure, or embodiment, or any of these things that you lead your life with?
Honestly, we've covered so much. Like
We have.
and I feel like we could just talk about this all day. But I think the biggest thing is, as we just spoke about, coming back to yourself. You know, everything that I do and put out there is literally all about that. And I imagine that's probably the reason why you connected with me in the first place, because it was about that power in being so unfuckwithably, authentically yourself.
Yeah.
That you magnetize everything that's right for you. So when you learn you, it's powerful, it's potent, and it really creates presence.
Yeah. And also, you know, when you were on that stage, it was my body that went, book a call. Like you went, I've got 5 free places for, and I didn't even hear the rest of the sentence. I was like on the QR code booking my call before you'd even finish your talk. And then, you know, when we had our first get to know you call, and I was just like, every cell in my body is like, this is your woman. And I was like, okay, like I'm just like, my brain's not even involved in this decision really. And you were sort of, do you want to know some details? Like, I'll take them, but I think from here downwards, it's a yes. Like, I will read them just so my brain understands the system and the schedule of, but yeah, it was really funny.
Exactly, and that's it. You know, when you that's what being like an embodied CEO is. It's that power. It's feeling it in your body, and that's when you've got that within yourself, you attract all the right people, opportunities, work, relationships that are meant for you, because that's it's magnetic. It's like you were just saying, like the cells in other people are drawn to the energy that you're giving off, your presence. And that is the most powerful work you can do. The most powerful work you can do.
Totally. And then also when I was at Emma's event last year, people go, have you got your ticket for next year? And in my body, I was like, if I'm here next year, I'm going to be on the stage. And I am going to be on the stage.
Yeah, yes.
Let's just talk about some of the stuff. So this is February 2026. This information is good forever. The stuff that Emma and I have talked about. We just talk about a little bit about what Emma's got coming up, and then I'll put all the links in the notes for the podcast and the YouTube channel. So yeah, what have you got coming up, Emma? Apart from a baby in the summer.
Apart from a baby, yeah, there's a lot. So obviously, you know, the Misfits are always there, and Misfit Nation is the thing that I'm most excited about. It's our yearly event. It's a full day event. We've got speakers. Business Misfits is all about play and joy and creativity, you know, which is why you ended up being there in the first place. So this year, 2026, it is on the 14th of May, but it is a yearly event. So obviously, if you're listening after that, we do have this every year, and it's an incredible event, full day of amazing speakers like Claire and play leaders, because we have games between our talks and lots of movement, vibrant. We ended up on stage dancing last year. It was incredible.
The grand finale, I was like, I need to be on stage this year. So music playing, and I grabbed someone else going, are you going to be with me? And we were just like started off. Yeah,
exactly. So that's what's coming up with the Misfits. Obviously, with regards to me, I'm Joyous Misfit on all the platforms. So whether you're on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, TikTok, it's all the same. Joyous Misfit, Joyous, and then Misfit. And then, of course, I've mentioned it already. My book is a forever thing. It's always there. And around the work in this book, I do run things like challenges. And I've actually got one coming up on Valentine's Day this year. So do follow me on Instagram if you want to follow along with that. But yeah, that's me. I would love for you to come into my world. Come and have a conversation with me. Everything I put out there is everything that we've talked about today. And yeah, it's been an absolute beautiful conversation, and I've loved it. Absolutely loved it.
Thank you. So yeah, so I'll put all the links down below, and yeah, Joyous Misfit, you'll find Emma on all the channels. And yeah, thank you so much, Emma, for your time and energy last year. We had an amazing journey together, and thanks for this beautiful conversation. And I will share another inspirational conversation very soon. Bye, everyone.
Bye.